Welcome to Inside Insights, your quick hit of tips, tools, and trends for manufacturing, distribution, and Dynamics 365 Business Central. Brought to you by InsightWorks.
Picture this. The reverse alarms of a forklift are just like blaring in your ear.
Oh yeah, the classic warehouse soundtrack.
Exactly right. And you are standing on a concrete floor, and you're holding this stack of grease-stained, torn paper packing slips.
Probably covered in coffee rings, too.
Oh, 100%. And like 3 separate delivery trucks have backed into the bays simultaneously. The drivers are just glaring at you, waiting for a signature.
Tapping their watches.
Right. And your manager's shouting over all this noise to clear the floor because, another shipment is 10 minutes away.
Just utter payoff.
Complete chaos.
Yeah.
And in your hand, you hold a digital scanner, which is basically your only tether to the company's pristine, perfectly organized enterprise resource planning system.
The irony, right. The messy reality versus the perfect digital world.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The digital world is colliding head-on with the messy, unpredictable physical reality of the supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are stepping into the absolute most chaotic, fast-paced environment in any warehouse, which is, of course, the receiving dock.
Yeah, and that collision between the digital ideal and the physical reality, that's where entire business systems either succeed or just completely unravel.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can have, like, the most elegant server architecture in the world, but if the interface fails the worker on that concrete floor, your data is compromised. It's just that simple.
Right. So for you listening, our source material today is this fascinating text called Optimizing Warehouse Receiving Discipline in Business Central.
Yeah.
We're going to explore the mechanics of Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central and a specialized warehouse management system called Warehouse Insight.
Yeah, which is a great tool.
It is. But the mission today's deep dive, it goes way beyond software. Fundamentally, we're talking about human psychology and workflow design. We're looking at why that standard management advice to just, be more careful.
Oh, right. The worst advice ever.
Yeah. Why telling people to be more careful almost never works. And how cleverly designing constraints into a system can essentially, engineer human error entirely out of existence.
Which is huge. I mean, shifting the blame away from the individual worker is such a profound change in operational thinking because we have this heavy tendency in corporate environments to kind of moralize errors.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, if a mistake happens, the immediate assumption is, well, it's a lack of care or a lack of focus or they just had poor training.
Okay, let's unpack this because our source text uses a brilliant phrase to describe the receiving dock. It says, this is an environment where conditions conspire against consistency.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredibly accurate. And the data and just the reality of warehouse operations backs that up completely. If you map out the entire life cycle of a product moving through a facility, picking, packing, shipping, the inbound receiving process is uniquely vulnerable.
Why is that exactly?
Because picking and shipping are internally controlled, right? You decide when to send a worker to grab an item. You set the pace.
Okay, right.
But receiving is dictated entirely by external forces. You cannot control the traffic that delayed a truck.
Oh, sure.
Or the vendor who just forgot to put a barcode on a pallet. Or the rainstorm that completely ruined a shipping label.
Yeah, you're just at the mercy of the outside world. Think about it like working as a short-order cook during a massive lunch rush.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. The ticket machine is just churning out paper nonstop. Half the tickets is smudged ink, one ticket says burger, no, and the rest of the paper is just ripped off.
So you have no idea. No onions, no pickles.
Exactly. You have no clue. And you have 5 waiters shouting at you simultaneously, the grill is smoking, and you just have to decide in an instant what goes on the plate.
You're just guessing at that point.
Yeah. And if you put pickles on a burger that wasn't supposed to have them, you aren't a bad cook who doesn't care about the customer.
Right. You're just doing your best.
You are operating in a chaotic environment that forces you to make a blind judgment call just to keep the line moving.
What's fascinating here is how the source material actively defends the warehouse worker using that exact same logic.
Really?
Yeah. Those workers are making dozens of snap judgment calls an hour. They're literally filling in the blanks of missing information while under immense pressure to clear the dock.
Just to get the next truck in.
Exactly. And when a system forces a human to guess 50 times a shift, the statistics of probability simply catch up with them. The process discipline breaks down not because of negligence, but because of massive cognitive overload.
Wow, cognitive overload. So those blind judgment calls are the specific vulnerabilities we really need to look at today. And the text zeroes in on two highly common errors. The very first one, it actually happens before a box is even opened.
Right, right.
The worker simply selects the wrong digital document on their handheld scanner to receive the physical goods against.
Yeah, and to understand why that happens, you really have to look at how native software is typically configured straight out of the box. Take the default setting in Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central.
Okay.
When a worker opens the receiving application on their mobile device, the list populating their little screen reflects every single document in the entire system that currently has a status of released.
Okay, wait. Meaning the purchasing team, or the sales team, has finalized the order and essentially broadcasted to the warehouse, hey, we expect this stuff to arrive at some point.
Precisely. And in a mid-sized to large operation, that broadcast creates a remarkably long, totally cluttered list.
I can imagine.
Right, so the worker is scrolling through purchase orders from external vendors, transfer orders representing goods moving between internal company locations, and maybe even like sales returns from customers. All of these completely different document types are just piled into one giant digital scroll on a 4-inch screen.
But wait a second. Isn't transparency, usually a good thing? I mean, in almost any other department, we preach transparency. We usually consider data silos to be the enemy of a well-run business. So why wouldn't a warehouse worker want to see the big picture of everything coming into the building? Doesn't that help them?
See, transparency is a phenomenal asset in a boardroom.
Okay.
Right, where you have the time and quiet to sit and analyze a spreadsheet. But on a chaotic receiving dock, transparency translates directly into noise.
Oh, noise. Wow.
Yeah. If you are that short order cook we talked about, you do not want the accounting department's payroll ledgers mixed in with your burger tickets.
Oh, man. Definitely not.
Right. You only need the information required to execute the specific task directly in front of you.
So by giving them all the options, the system actually creates the opportunity for the error.
Exactly. The more choices on the screen, the higher the statistical likelihood of a mistap. A worker wearing heavy work gloves, trying to balance a scanner, while a truck driver taps his watch. I mean, they're incredibly likely to click the wrong purchase order if there are 80 irrelevant documents surrounding it.
That makes total sense.
And this is where the source introduces the concept of device configuration through the Warehouse Insight system.
Okay, tell me about that.
So it basically takes the core Business Central workflow and allows administrators to strictly curate the reality that the worker sees on that mobile device.
Okay, so they are actively hiding the noise. How does that actually work, mechanically speaking? What are they doing?
It can be highly granular. An administrator can tie a specific device view to a worker's unique login credentials, or even to the IP address of a scanner assigned to a specific physical zone in the warehouse.
Oh, wow. So it knows who you are and where you are.
Exactly. So if a worker logs in and their role is strictly handling inbound freight from external vendors, the system is configured. So transfer orders and sales returns simply do not exist on their screen. They can't see them.
That's brilliant.
And if a scanner is physically locked to, say, dock door number 2, the device configuration can filter the view to only show purchase orders scheduled for that specific door.
So you're literally removing the wrong choices from the menu entirely. The worker doesn't have to consciously ignore 50 irrelevant documents. The system just presents them with the 5 documents they actually need to care about today.
Right.
You aren't training them to, scroll more carefully. You've engineered the scrolling mistake out of the equation.
Which is the whole goal. But this raises an important question, though. Filtering the list solves the digital side of the equation.
Right.
But what happens when the worker selects the absolutely correct document and the physical reality of the delivery refuses to match it?
Oh, man. Here's where it gets really interesting, because finding the right file is only the first hurdle. We still have to deal with the actual cardboard boxes on the pallet.
Exactly.
And that brings us to the second major vulnerability discussed in the text, the split line dilemma.
Yeah, line splitting is an incredibly common logistical headache. It occurs whenever a physical shipment fractures the clean digital record.
So,
Let's say purchasing ordered 1,000 units of a specific microchip. The Business Central document has one neat line, item X, quantity 1,000.
okay, nice and tidy.
Right. But the truck arrives, and the vendor only had enough stock to send 500 today. The rest are back-ordered.
Oh, no.
Or maybe the entire 1,000 units arrive, but the physical volume is so massive that it cannot possibly fit into a single bin on the warehouse shelving.
Okay, so they have to break it up.
Yeah, requiring the worker to stash it across 3 different aisles.
Okay, think about this for a second. Think about booking a large table at a restaurant for a birthday dinner. You make a reservation for 12 people. In the restaurant system, you are one perfect, unbroken data point, right? Party of 12, table 4.
Right, simple.
But physical reality intervenes. Your party arrives in 3 separate, staggered groups. 4 people show up on time, 5 people arrive 20 minutes late, and 3 people are currently circling the block looking for street parking.
Oh, I've been there. And the hostess's clean digital reservation has just completely shattered.
Shattered!
She has to decide on the fly. Do I seat the 4 now? Do I split the table into 2 smaller booths? Where do I put the stragglers when they finally walk in?
And the hostess is making all those decisions while a line of other hungry customers is forming out the door.
Exactly.
So in the warehouse, when that shipment is short or when it needs to be broken up, the software has to split the line. It has to create a brand new digital line for the unhandled quantity. But the massive vulnerability here is the bin code.
Yeah, because a bin code in a modern warehouse is rarely just a simple letter. It is usually a complex alphanumeric sequence, something like 04B12.
Meaning like aisle 4, rack B, shelf 12.
Exactly. And when Warehouse Insights splits a line to accommodate the fracturing of the shipment, the system has to decide what to do with that alphanumeric bin assignment for the new leftover product.
Okay, so according to the text, without deliberate administrative configuration, the software's default reaction to a split line can just cause absolute chaos.
Oh, yeah. The default behavior might simply leave the bin assignment completely blank on the newly generated line.
Which means the worker has to type it in.
Right. Or, even more dangerously, it might automatically carry forward the previous bin value.
Wait, really?
Yeah. So the device tells the worker to put the second half of the shipment into bin 04B12, even though the worker literally just physically filled that exact shelf to maximum capacity with the first half of the shipment.
So the device is giving an impossible command. The worker is standing there looking at a full shelf, holding a box that needs a home, and the scanner is essentially shrugging its shoulders.
And the worker is once again forced into a snap judgment call. They either have to find a new empty bin, write down the alphanumeric code, and manually type it into scanner while wearing gloves and rushing to clear the dock.
Which is super error-prone.
Highly error-prone. Or, what happens far too often, they just place the box on the nearest empty shelf and accept the system's incorrect default, fully intending to fix it later.
But later never comes in a busy warehouse.
Never.
The moment they hit accept on that incorrect default, the map no longer matches the territory. The digital record in Business Central is completely divorced from where the physical goods actually sit in the building.
And that's exactly where device configuration steps in as the definitive solution. Through Warehouse Insight, administrators do not leave the split line bin behavior up to chance. They strictly define the logic in advance. The admin can configure the software so that whenever a line splits, the bin code automatically clears, physically forcing the worker to scan a fresh bin barcode before the system will allow them to proceed.
Oh, that's hard, so they can't just bypass it.
Right. Alternatively, they can tie the configuration to specific item categories, allowing a bin code to carry forward only if the item is small enough that multiple shipments will comfortably fit into the same physical space.
So the worker doesn't have to calculate the logistics or remember the specific procedure. The system just prompts them with the exact correct behavior based on the specific context of the item they're holding. The text states it perfectly, actually. Bin assignment errors that trace back to split line handling become avoidable rather than inevitable.
Yeah, the word inevitable is the key to understanding complex systems. Because forcing humans to manually manage complex alphanumeric data entry while under immense environmental stress, it basically guarantees a failure rate. By configuring the behavior upstream, you eliminate the mental math.
So what does this all mean? I mean, we have zoomed incredibly far in on 2 seemingly minor tech interactions on a handheld scanner. We're talking about filtering a document list and automating a bin code rule during a split line. Why should anyone listening, especially if they don't work in logistics, care about this granular level of operational software?
Because A tiny pebble dropped at the receiving dock creates a totally destructive avalanche on the other side of the building.
An avalanche.
Yes. The source text explicitly outlines the ripple effect of downstream errors, highlighting a fundamental rule of business operations. Fixing an error downstream requires exponentially more time, capital, and labor than preventing it upstream.
Okay, let's trace the path of that avalanche. Take that first error we discussed. The worker, overwhelmed by the noisy show everything list, selects the wrong purchase order to receive against.
Okay, so the physical goods might make it onto a shelf, but the digital financial record is now severely corrupted. This initiates a massive reconciliation nightmare for the accounting department. Because when the external vendor sends the invoice for those goods, the accounting clerk in Business Central attempts to match the invoice to the purchase order.
But it won't match,
Right. Because the system shows the purchase order was never actually received because the goods were accidentally logged against a totally different document.
So the invoice won't process, payments get delayed.
Vendor relationships become strained, credit terms get threatened, and an accounting professional sitting in a quiet office 3 weeks later has to spend hours acting like a detective digging through audit trails just to untangle a digital knot that took a warehouse worker half a second to tie on the dock.
It's just wild how one tack on a screen causes all that. And the avalanche gets even worse with the second error, the split line where the bin assignment goes wrong and the physical box ends up on a different shelf than the computer thinks it is.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, a bad bin assignment leads directly to the single most dreaded scenario in supply chain management, an inventory discrepancy.
The dreaded inventory discrepancy.
Oh, it's a nightmare. Let's say the system recorded the goods in bin 04B12, but the worker physically placed them 2 aisles over. A week later, a critical customer places an urgent order, or the manufacturing floor desperately needs that specific part to keep an assembly line running.
And the computer says, great news, we have 50 units available in bin 04B12.
Exactly. So picker is dispatched. They walk all the way across the massive facility, they climb the ladder, look into the bin, and it is completely empty.
Unbelievable. The goods are technically inside the 4 walls of the building, but effectively they have just vanished into thin air.
Poof.
Yeah.
Gone. And the downstream cost is staggering. You are paying the picker's hourly wage to wander the aisles searching for the lost pallet.
Right.
You're paying a manager to investigate the discrepancy. You might literally halt a production line, which can cost thousands of dollars a minute. Or you're paying customer service reps to apologize to an angry client for a delayed shipment.
Wow.
The error compounds at every single stage of the business.
So all of that chaos, the delayed invoices, the empty shelves, the angry customers, stems from a poorly configured screen on a handheld device at the very beginning of the journey.
Yep.
It really dramatically shifts your perspective on where a business should invest its energy. It brings us back to the core philosophical takeaway of this entire deep dive. The text summarizes it perfectly. Tightening receiving discipline through configuration is a vastly more reliable way to protect the accuracy of your data than attempting to train people to be more careful.
It's like you're building architectural guardrails. If you send a driver up a treacherous, winding mountain road, you don't just hand them a manual on safe driving and hope they don't veer off the edge.
No, of course not. You build physical steel guardrails.
Right. Even if they hit a patch of ice, the system physically prevents them from going over the cliff. Device configuration in Warehouse Insight acts as that exact digital guardrail for the receiving dock.
You are protecting the worker. By curating the information they see, and by automating the complex data decisions like split-line bin codes, you allow them to work at the incredibly high speed the environment demands, without the crushing burden of constant cognitive overload.
Exactly.
For you listening, if you want to explore the specific technical implementation of these features, the resource mentioned in our source material is wmsfordynamics.com, or you can always consult directly with a Business Central partner.
It really is a profound example of adapting our technology to accommodate the realities of human behavior, rather than stubbornly forcing humans to adapt to a sterile technological ideal.
Perfectly said.
Asia.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We spent our time today exploring warehouse docks, split lines, and handheld scanners. But apply this framework to your own life. Think about your daily routines, your workplace, the digital tools you use every single day. How often are you frustrated with yourself, or maybe blaming your colleagues for being careless or unfocused when mistakes happen?
Right, it happens all the time.
What if the root cause isn't a lack of discipline at all? What if you were simply operating inside a poorly configured system that forces you to make blind judgment calls while under pressure?
Yeah.
If you took the time to change the device configurations of your own life, hiding the irrelevant noise, building guardrails for your most predictable decisions, how many of your daily errors would simply vanish?
I love that. When you redesign the environment, the performance inevitably transforms itself.
We have reached the end of the dock for today. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us and for exploring the fascinating intersection of digital rules and physical reality. We will see you on the next one.